other emerging forms of harm. What the prosecution service do differently to remain responsive to these changes in forms of violence against women and girls.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, let me thank the FIDA leadership for inviting the Office of the DPP. And I also want to just let you know that I became a member of FIDA this year. The leadership really did a lot in ensuring that I become a member. I am so happy to be part of this wonderful family. Thank you very much for your question. It is notable that as the Office of the DPP, I think we have been a step ahead somehow, because even when the Sexual Offences Act was first came into place, the Office of the DPP offered me as the person to represent the task force as as a secretary. So you can see we were already on the front line to fight and ensure that we support the Gender-Based Violence and the Sexual Offences Act. Again, we, as an office, there is a special division that literally deals with issues of sexual and gender-based violence. It coordinates all the 47 counties and the substations, so that if there is an issue, whether it's online, whether it's something which has come in our offices, on the spot without waiting for directions, we deal with it there and then. Then now maybe as the coordinating center of power, really power, let me say the focal point, I'm able to seek guidance. Keeps on changing every day. We see very different things happening in the space. So as the Office of the DPP, we are always writing concepts to the DPP as the department in charge of that relates to sexual and gender-based violence. We write concepts and tell him this is something which has come up. This one we must deal with it without waiting to be told about it. But again, it's so interesting that we have worked with FIDA for a long time. Since I was a young prosecutor, FIDA has worked with me, working with my victims. So again, I'm sitting in a forum where I'll be reaching out to this wonderful organization to come out and, educate or sensitize our prosecutors. I can tell you for a fact that we are dealing with prosecutors who are very, very well versed with technology. Actually, 60% of our prosecutors are under 30. So you can imagine they are they want to learn something. They'll ask questions in the forum. Issues of technology, yes, they are a challenge. But I think as an office, we are also ahead. We have not been left behind, especially on educating, sensitizing, training prosecutors. I had a very good neighbor today, the East African Law Society president. I think there's something he actually talked to me about. And I think technology, we seem to be behind. There are things which we need to also reach out and learn. We don't know everything. I think we are open to accepting that we have some weaknesses when it comes to new and emerging crimes. Why not seek partners to work with? So for me, I think we have been ahead on the issue of ensuring that we train our prosecutors, but that's not to say that we are not ready to partner, ready to learn. Sometimes when we take cases to court, and judge will agree, you always teach us something, even from the jurisprudence. We have learned a lot from the jurisprudence. At times I think I have a very good case, a watertight case, then I realize there's something I left. Why not? Why not learn from even the jurisprudence that is already there? So for us, I can say that we are a step ahead, but that's not to say that we are proud to say that we are not learning. We want to learn, and we are going to continue learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe as a follow-up question, we know Norman is an island. What can societies, civil societies like FIDA Kenya, we've had a long history of strategic impact litigation, advocacy work, ensuring women and girls' rights are protected and emancipated. How can we, together with ODPP, function together in collaboration to ensure these rights are actually realized rather than just having a referral pathway?
Thank you very much. And I think this has worked before. When you see a case where there's a vulnerable, there's a victim vulnerable, sometimes even it's something which is in the public interest, we encourage that an organization like FIDA comes in. It's not to say that the prosecutor is not going to do the job. We are going to do our job and do it perfectly. But just that solidarity that you're working with the victim, come, join us, and don't just come on the first day. Work with the victim throughout to the end. There has been a belief that on the first day, because of the cameras, we come and show our solidarity. That's solidarity. It was seen just in the other day, the most recent case where we got a successful conviction, the case of the young lady who was killed in Sharon. I need not give too much details because there's a possibility they have appealed and I would be getting into the wrong space. But there was that solidarity. It was there. The prosecutors did a wonderful job. We were scared. We didn't even know whether we are going to get a conviction. But the solidarity we got from FIDA and other bodies, that is one way of standing with the victims. Another is to have deliberate MOUs, for instance, with the various actors, whether it's the police where it all starts, whether it's our office as the office of the DPP, have some sort of MOUs. And I think we are working on this. We are there. We are. It's something which is ongoing. So I believe this is a way of making sure that we are on toes. Where you feel that we are sluggish a bit, you hold our hand. So I think it's to join hands, continue as support in terms of even sensitizing the prosecutors who are on the ground. And the beauty is that you are not only supporting prosecutors, lady prosecutors, you are doing it generally because at the end of the day, some of the victims prefer working with the male prosecutors. That is another way of dealing with it. I think I'm also thinking that when we are doing the trial preparation, FIDA would come out to help us with the psychosocial support, work with the victim, let them understand that it's not going to be an easy walk, but when you have support from an organization like FIDA and any other organization working through the trial for a victim, it means something. So that's another area I would say. MOUs is another way. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. A round of applause for Ms. Nyamosi. Allow me to go to you, Tess. We've seen a great increase, a significant increase in women joining the legal profession, but this does not necessarily translate into leadership position or influences. What can we do, or why is this gap there, and what can LSK influence to ensure that more women take up these leadership spaces?
Thank you for that question. The first thing that I want us first to challenge all of us is to acknowledge presence is very different from power. When you look at our profession, 2/3 are actually female. But when it comes to the ones who hold the power, they are the male. Even when you go to law school, in the classroom, you'll find 2/3 are still girl child. So it is telling us that indeed numerical representation, it is not equal to power. So we need to move a step notch higher to ensure and to be very deliberate. First and foremost, the Law Society is almost 53 years old, but we've only had 2 female presidents, which is so unfortunate, meaning out of 53, only 2. 51 have been men. At this juncture, the first thing that we need to ask ourselves, why are we not trusting ourselves enough to first offer ourselves in those leadership positions? And once we offer ourselves into those leadership positions, the next step is once you get into those leadership positions, we need to ensure as women, we are in the boardroom that actually makes the final decision, the final say, not just fill in that room. Thirdly, we also need to be very deliberate because politics is very expensive, a discussion that we rarely have. And as the Law Society does not support people who are vying, but we have institutions like Kiwapo. Kiwapo have already showed us how they stand firm for women leaders in parliament. What about us? Why can't we also start thinking of coming up with such, even if it's an academy, even if it's a committee, that will actually be encouraging, number one, be even sourcing and funding for resource mobilization, because as you've said, leadership is very expensive. And fourthly, we also need to ask ourselves, when we are given these positions of power, do we trust ourselves enough to carry them diligently? We have seen in the 2 presidents who have served the Law Society, from my opinion, they have served way better than the 51 men who have served. Because when you talk about Faith Odhiambo, you cannot talk about rule of law without Emeritus Faith Odhiambo. Am I lying? Look at Rachel Amamo. You cannot talk about security in this country without mentioning her. For how long has she been the CS for security? So, after we have established that we can lead, we also need to be so courageous and have the confidence to trust ourselves enough and to actually lead. Fifthly, as we lead, we also need to open doors to the young ones and be very, very deliberate. Something that I posed to our chair in Mwalimu. FIDA is very common to law students. But when you ask these law students, how well are they mentored by FIDA people? They will tell you, we're only contracted for events. That is not how leadership works. Leadership works from them seeing us how we're doing it. Look around this room. How many of us are young lawyers? No, just look around. How many of us are young lawyers? Let's just raise our hands. Okay, 5 and below? 5 years and below in the profession, PQE? You see? You see. There are 5. There are 5 and I believe the room is almost 30-something. That is not a good number. What am I saying? As we are making this deliberate action, we also need to make deliberate moves. Like when you are planning this event, we need to challenge ourselves. How are we going to bring the young lawyers so that they can see how leadership is done? They can hear from people who have led. They can see the steps on how leadership can move from point A to point B to point C. But when we are planning events, we never consider that. So we need to open our minds and challenge ourselves to understand for us to be in this leadership space, we need to be very deliberate, even in the actions and how we are inviting these young ones. Yes.
Thank you so much. Looking at the aspect of the young female advocates and your leadership journey personally, what is it that you wish you knew as you took up this cause of leadership mantle?
When I took up the leadership mantle, into council, immediately I went to Machakos County, which was even more, and I struggled because I thought the people that I grew up with are the only people who walk the steps and you don't feel lonely. When I was trying to understand how my leadership is, I won't lie, it had a lot of confusion. But I found clarity. I went to Australia at the age of 18. She had to go to study. Her peers were in Kenya doing undergrad. But when she went there, unfortunately, her scholarship did not pick immediately. Were in school. So when she was trying to establish middle ground with her peers on what is going on, how are you feeling, how is life in Australia, it was also very difficult for her to do that. And that is why she had to grow wings and realize I need people who are ahead of me to help me walk that journey. So that is the first thing. The second thing, please, 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 do not shrink, do not conform, and do not become someone else. Because the moment you start doing this, you will lose who you are, and you will never be able to actually deliver what you need to deliver in that leadership role. Pray tell, every now and then, you will always see a young person always being given a million zillion advices, which is the norm of the society. Because we always understand that wisdom comes with age, but at the same time, not everybody grows old to be wise. I'm not lying. That's why in the village you'll see a village full, right? Yes. So because of that, at times, not every advice is the right advice. Trust in yourself. Trust in what and the vision that you already have. And then find like-minded people, not the ones who are going to whisper that shrinking voice. Oh, don't do this. It is too early. You're too young. Oh, wait for your chance. No. If the conviction is there, walk. If the conviction is there, we have been told march. So march. And once you start marching, you have the confidence by yourself, and then you identify the people who are going to help you propel and do better. That is my advice to the young lawyers. That is something I didn't know then, but now I know better. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for us. The 51st president of the Law Society of Kenya and the only second female president of LSK. Karibu sana. Having served as the second female president of the Law Society of Kenya, you've had opportunities and you've had challenges. How did you traverse the same?
First of all, thank you, FIDA Kenya, for having me. I think the conversation that we're having today about legacy, institutional leadership, and sustainable change is important because we have reached a level, even as the chair was giving her opening remarks, with regards to what more can be done. You've been in advocacy, you've been in all these spaces, what more? Yes, I'm proud and honored to have served as the second female president, but I think as we celebrate being the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, we need to raise other questions of what does that mean? What have we done, or what difference have you made in that position at the period that you're able to undertake it? Because our objective should not be to produce exceptional women who can survive unfair institutions. Our objective should be to build institutions which women leadership is ordinary. Today we celebrate, as you were speaking, Judge, about the challenges where people didn't even have toilets. I remember my mentor, Professor Mbote, saying when they joined the university, there was nothing like leave, particularly there was no maternity leave. So I remember she said that when she asked what happens, because she had a baby, you just take your normal leave, then you come back. And it took a while for them to change, for the university to accept even having maternity leave. And I say this, don't take it like I'm being bad, but I say this like this. Today the judiciary is celebrating. We have a Chief Justice, Deputy Chief Justice, the CRJ. What do we have to show for it that has changed the institution of the judiciary? A survey was done about sexual harassment, and it's still at the all-time high, yet we have the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice, the CRJ, as all women in positions of power. It means we have women who have sat on seats, become comfortable, and continued with status quo. I am sorry, but that is just the truth. Because when young people join, because particularly now, how many young people have joined the judiciary? They are going to face sexual harassment. I was surprised recently being told that this thing of women being expected to serve tea in the judiciary is still there. How can there be a CRJ and women are expected to serve tea? That they don't want to go for tea break because the males there will expect them to serve them tea. You see, these are nuances we should not even be hearing. First of all, in this day and age, and two, when we have women in power. And when we say CJ and Deputy CJ, they're actually women in proper power that people fear when they hear their name. Those are the questions we should be asking ourselves. When you occupy spaces, what is the difference? We have, we need to be asking ourselves, when I joined, if you ask about challenges, I asked myself, what am I going to do different? When I was vice president, then my council was more men than women. But we introduced this element of a woman who is, when you get a baby, the first 1 year, LSK will continue to pay for you and your child to attend events. Why? Because you not as a leader, you'll not be able to attend all the events that you're supposed to because you're president. When I was Nairobi rep, I recognized and I realized it, but we were fighting predominantly that 2 years that we were serving. So I was, in fact, the beauty that I love COVID is I had meetings with my baby on my lap. I remember the AGM I joined virtually because I had just given birth and we had an AGM 2 weeks. So I joined virtually. So COVID was the one that was able to give us that change. The question is, our institutions, we have not implemented changes to accommodate our women. FIDA, there was that change that we did when I was secretary. So I said, when I go to LSK, we must ensure that we have that in place so that even if you're a leader or a staff, you're still able to do your work and go with your child and a housemaid paid by the institution. It may look little, but it's an impact. By the time I was president, I made sure the building that we built in South Sea had a creche. Though I left when it was still having files, but we had set in plan how those files will go into a different storage unit so that mothers can breastfeed, bring their kids, even our members who are coming in. The question is, what small changes can you implement when you sit in those positions of leadership? In terms of public interest litigation, I wanted to purposely mentor girls. When you're applying for senior counsel, and I sat with the vice chair of the senior counsel, but a lot of questions they ask is, what cases have you done? And so I purposely kept insisting young lawyers, particularly female lawyers, are paired to be able to do these cases. You may not see the value, but the day you want to raise up to the bar, you're being asked, what's your portfolio? What can you say you have done that can count to say you are equal to the task? When we served with Joyce Majiwa, I remember as we were looking at senior counsels who would be coming in, before we were two women, okay, at the AG, but the AG never attended those meetings. But I said the one thing, even before we discuss any quota or any persons with disability or even talking about marginalized tribes, we said, first we agree on the women quota. And the vice chair led that argument. And we insisted, let's insist on how many women first is the quota, then we can fight about all other, the number that is coming in. So that was the time we had the highest recruitment of senior counsels joining the senior counsel bar. And vice chair, you can attest to that. And I gave my vice here is ensure that that happens. Now, a research by the Institute of African Women in Law identifies culture, sexual harassment, inadequate support networks, and structural discrimination among the barriers women face in progressing. When I left, we had set up a committee to deal with the sexual harassment claims. And the chair of FIDA had even donated who will be the chair of that committee. The question is, how are we dealing with sexual harassment in the legal profession? And we have to confront this as a true issue. Particularly as we FIDA women sitting in the room, it's in the judiciary, it's in the profession. The problem is when we have the Me Too campaigns online, there are also men who demand to confront their accuser. Because if you post them on social media without saying the modalities or what issue you're saying was sexual harassment, also them they feel harassed and defamed. Because a lot of people, when I sat as president, I got to hear people who had to go through scrutiny because of clients who are abroad and had to go through internal proceedings, yet the accuser did not bring forth the complaint. So they felt highly discriminated and were actually angry at me for not protecting them, because they were saying, fine, if someone said I've committed a wrong, let's deal with it before the disciplinary committee. And that was the aim that we set up the task force, to be able to handle those issues. But then again, we have so many young women who are afraid because they have faced this sexual harassment. Most likely it's your boss who will determine if they'll sign that pupillage book or not, because the horror stories you hear out here are terrible. People who will even tell you, it doesn't matter even sexual harassment, will tell you, pay for his PC if you want them to sign your book for being admitted. And these are things that young men and women are facing. You know, I felt very at pains when I saw one of our FIDA members was also put on that Me Too thing. And, you know, it got to Tuko News. So they were being harassed in their emails for the farm. Her personal number was shared. And she felt, you know, this was such a personalized attack against her, yet she didn't even know what is the basis. And so we need to think about how to deal with these things at a structural level, because you have real cases, real lives that have been affected, but at the same time, you have people who can use these opportunities to stigmatize somebody without having a right to reply. And we are lawyers. You know, once someone tells you they have the right to a fair trial and face the accuser, you can't be the one shouting for rule of law. Then you say, because that someone has even come out and said it, we just deal with you summarily. So challenges, I would say there are various challenges. And something that a president emeritus once told me, he said, Faith, LSK is an office, once you enter, no one gives you a manual. You'll have to make personal decisions on your own, because you will face the brunt as an individual, because people look at the president. The other members, of course, they play a very important integral role as you work with them. But the person who gets the first hit and is responsible to protect the rest of the council members is the president. So you will get a lot of advice. Some I had this policy of listening to everyone, but I would make my individual decision, because I will face the cross as an individual. And, you know, I would say the biggest challenges as well was, of course, what happened in 2024, how to balance between the role of you serving the profession as well as serving members of the public. The sexual harassment claims that came out also painted our legal profession in a very bad light, that we need to reflect and look at how do we resolve those issues. Because we cannot be talking about gender-based violence and SGBV at a national level, yet we cannot deal with the menace at this level. And also the question of how well you can do mentorship. I think that's the time people were saying they don't want mentorship, they want money. So, but you see, the reality is you have to balance those interests. And I was reflecting, I keep saying the legal profession is just like the national landscape. We have very many educated, well-articulated young members joining the bar, but there's no opportunity. You see, I used to tell government, unless you hire, where are we going to get the opportunities for these people? In fact, a challenge I used to tell the Attorney General's office until she advertised, because I said, unless you pick from the legal profession, where are they going to get jobs? Because when the judiciary picks a number, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, the AG's office, you also give hope to a lot of the young people who are being churned in different universities to have hope to get jobs. Because the reality is we have a large youth bulge, and it's not just a problem for the national government. It's also a problem in this particular council or in all other councils. Because unless you're able to meet that difference, then it's still a problem. And I would say that I think also mentoring different people is also, I would say, a blessing and a challenge, because I have this policy. I mentor people who come to me because there are people who have also a, arm's length policy. So I am open to mentoring those who are open to coming to me, and that's the policy that I always adopt. But I think those are challenges, yeah.
Thank you so much. Maybe just a follow-up question. Now that you've been in that position, and we've seen you're the second out of 53, as Tess has told us, what can women leaders like yourself and all of you here today, including the women rights organizations like FIDA Kenya, do to ensure that this is not a celebratory moment, that, wow, we have a first female in ABCD, such that it just becomes a norm and it is sustainable?
Well, I've been a member of FIDA from university, and I think maybe that's where FIDA should also do a bit more of picking more members from university level, because I can say I'm loyal to FIDA because they picked me when I was still I didn't even have a paper. I was still a student. And I can say what students like going to eat, and going to eat in nice places. FIDA introduced me to nice places at an early age. And then meeting also amazing women that now you see they have risen in the ranks, CJ and the former DCJ, Dr. Nancy Baraza, amongst others that you'd get to meet only in FIDA events. FIDA did a report saying they have served over 10,000 clients in 2024 alone. While its current agenda includes GBV response and criminal law reform, SGV, and emerging forms of technology-facilitated violence, and they have been doing a lot of advocacy. The question is, how do we turn the victories we have won into systems that cannot easily be undone? I remember having a very big spate between certain senators as I was supporting the two-thirds gender bill that is being advocated by Honorable Veronica. And they were saying that women should just go to, the ballot and fight it like anyone else. That the president has recognized that violence is an issue and they are going to deal with it and we should look into it. And I was like, I got tired of being diplomat, and I just told the senator, be realistic. If you are one of the chief goons who has been caught, carrying goons here and around, and the president has not dealt with you, how will the president deal with the issue of goons in this country, which is a huge barrier, particularly for women to be able to earn or fight for elective positions? I think we need to focus on how we can change systems. The first two-thirds gender bill, I was still in FIDA Kenya leadership when I can say FIDA mlisalimia MPs, or you facilitated kusalimia ya MPs. Why? Because for the first time, FIDA was telling every woman to call their member of parliament and tell them to go in and vote for that bill. We even had men standing outside the corridor. And they were so angry that FIDA, because of FIDA's campaign, this happened. I think we need to bring such aggressive campaigns for institutional and policy changes so that things can actually work. Because we have gotten used to, from the decision by the Willy Mutunga bench to date, two-thirds is a progressive issue that keeps being pushed every single life of the parliament. And so unless there's a different aggressive method that we can actually have institutionalization, it's still a problem. We need to move from individual victories to systematic change. We win this case, we celebrate, yes, we have won this case, but what has it changed? Has it changed our practice? Has it changed our policy? Is there a budget change? And has there been people held responsible that there is behavioral change? You know, we need to start from even the budget making process, because until the Human Rights Day, where women were tear gassed, you saw the peers coming to comfortably respond and say things were okay. Until the backlash from the international community is when now they quickly set up the Presidential Task Force on Femicide and GBV to now deal with the issue as a response to the outreach. And for FIDA is to push that now that there is a document, what policies and has it been budgeted into for the next, even as we have the supplementary budgets, people should not give you promises for the next election. This current sitting presidency, are there changes or institutional policy changes? Secondly, we need to become more data driven. We need to know what's actually happening to women throughout the profession. And this is a challenge, I would say, to FIDA to work with LSK. Because I've given data and analysis before, but it's for studies, IAWL, amongst others who are doing studies. How much are we investing to put studies to analyze? Yes, if a majority of women are coming into the legal profession, who first finish the law degree, how many join the legal profession, then how many stay in the legal profession, and why do they leave the legal profession? Is practice difficult? You know, I've had sessions with single mothers who are running law firms and the challenges that they're having and a lot of support they need to be able to run those law firms. Because you're thinking, if you're not at the firm is not running. You know, I had a fellow FIDA member who joined the bench, and she used to make fun and tell me, Faith, when we go for this retreat, I lock the door and I go home. And that I lock the door and I go for the retreat. And the reason that pushed me into a partnership, or I thought about a partnership, because at that younger age, I thought, if I get pregnant, what happens to the farm? Will you be able to afford an associate who can run the farm? If you can't afford, what happens? And particularly now that FIDA has been cracking down on quacks, you can't leave your farm to a clerk to run. So you need to rethink and reinvent and asking ourselves questions. Should we be advising us to have more women-led law firms so that the policies are softer and we have ways of supporting one another, or firms having policies to support women who go through the normal course of recreation in our country? So our data-driven also needs to ask who gets significant briefs, who gets appointed, who runs for leadership, who wins, who drops out. We need to also invest in the pipeline. You know, we shouldn't wait to ask, how come there are no women who have applied? The question is, what have we invested in that pipeline for women to apply, for women to get those positions of power? We were having a discussion with Sauti Sessions, and something came out that most women, particularly in politics, are women in labor in politics. They'll be the strategists, the organizers, the mobilizers, but who takes those women in labor and transforms them into leaders? You have women that are known mobilizers of, let's say, even Nairobi or different counties, but why doesn't their mobilization transform into leadership? Because no one is investing in them in the pipeline. They stay the same mama mboga, they stay the same operator in a matatu line or in the market area. Their life doesn't change because no one invests in them in that pipeline to grow, to be able to vie for MCA, for member of parliament, or any other position. There has to be that level of investment. And fourth, we need to recognize that women's experiences are not identical. Everyone will join the legal profession with different experiences. If you're lucky, you have a hand that holds you. If you don't, you may end up facing a lot of the bad things or the darker side of the legal profession. But if you have more institutions that open their door to you, that FIDA has a set mentorship program, LSK has one, that you attract young men and women from the time they're joining the legal profession. And I also will say that, you know, this mediation center that is in FIDA is a very good attraction point for even men to join and support FIDA, because they are looking for that experience to grow in the mentorship field. And finally, we need to build institutions that outlive us. The mediation center has changed, in FIDA, has changed the purview of most men. I was still serving as FIDA board when we made that institutional branding change. And I think actually we were in the first cohort with the council members who went through the mediation. It has driven a different shift, because FIDA used to be sung that FIDA is a breaker of families. FIDA ensures that the women take all your properties. But mediation has changed that mindset, because there are men even who bring their wives to FIDA Kenya for mediation purposes. And so I think that these are few things that can be done. We need to map out and see what is the impact of our interventions, and also something FIDA needs to, you need to document more, so that those documentation can be driven by data, and also it will attract donors in the work that you do. But for me, it's most importantly, we can start tracking the impact that we have, and you continue to be a powerful voice that people must listen to as they drive the women's agenda, as they look at the 2/3 question, as we look at women who, to date, 20% of women CEOs are what is reflected in parastatals, in public parastatals. In even chairmanship, like Mercy Okiro is one of the very few, only 20% of women hold positions as chairs in parastatals in the current leadership. So by pushing for those institutional changes, we can now say we have pushed for policies to ensure that when a woman is appointed or a man is appointed next time is a woman, then we'll soon be saying the numbers have risen, because we have pushed for policy change that will outlive whoever sits in those oval offices, will be able to have the impact that we wish. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A round of applause, please. As we proceed to our VC Emeritus, allow me first to recognize the presence of our cost representative to the Law Society of Kenya, Mr. Titus Mukanzi. He's also a friend of FIDA and soon to be lifetime member. Karibu sana. Mr. Maura Kabata, thank you so much for being here with us today and being part of this panel. As FIDA, you can say we also appreciate and realize 2/3 gender rule. For the female lawyers, are they really making changes in the justice system, or is it that they're taking up spaces that are not even initially made out for them?
Thank you. Thank you so much for the question, and a lot of gratitude to the organizers of this event. Chair, I have to confess that yesterday evening we were treated to very, very memorable moments. Let me leave it at that. But you can tell that we were late to begin today. The concept about the structures that are set can be both historical as well as current. And so in the history of things, you can see that there is an overt and deliberate attempt to segment one part gender. I'm sorry, I am restricted to a gender analysis that is, to me, old, but it works for me, so I won't go to any other gender apart from those that are normatively agreed upon by a majority. And so historically, you will find that even the access to legal education or formative education to women was quite a challenge. And it transcended not only in indigent communities, but also in upper as well as middle class families, where education will be most likely given a more focus on the male children or male members of that family are not their women counterparts. And so even currently, as you look at it, it may seem as though we have progress, but this progress stands from a moment where it's one large closed door for a woman to succeed especially in leadership roles, but it now transcends to several other smaller doors while the main one is now open. So we say 2/3, the Article 27. But after that, then other smaller doors emerge. And so it's a competition, if you ask me, that women in leadership or women in decision-making roles have to undergo an extra effort to succeed than their male counterparts. And with this, I was raised by largely my mother, so I'm not ashamed to apportion my success to women. And even serving under faith, I did not find it difficult as a man to engage or play the part that, it's true, to play the part that I'm seeing she's looking at me as though she's doubting, but it's true, that we have roles to play, and these roles can also turn around to be gender roles. For women in particular, then it becomes further a challenge, because the women play a greater role in achieving their own autonomy and their own professional success. It cannot be gainsaid to say that if men, for instance, had labor rights issues, and labor I mean like maternity, labor issues, then they will be mainstreamed even in parliament. And so even, yes, correct? Yes. And even the simple issue as to, the normal monthly cycle, it's actually a health issue in itself, that defines, in our office we started it and we said every month we'll have 2 months of just 2 days a month. It's not even computed as leave, but we said 2 days each month for our female colleagues, until our male colleagues, including myself, we saw it necessary that it is important to have these discussions. I'm a new father now, probably 4 or 5 months, and After you voted me out, I was voted in as a father, and so I am extremely happy. But then it has also taught me and given me reflections, so many reflections that I could not see while on the other side. It's a bit of a challenge, because sometimes I don't know how to interact with it and to find the strength to even tell my spouse, I will wake up at 4 in the morning to help you, and then I don't wake up, I sleep, I find myself at 8. But the strength that she has to take for that night to wake up at least 2 times or 3 times and still go to work in the morning, she's in the office at 9, she's HR manager somewhere. I really, as a person, not as a man, as a person, I do not know where she gets that strength from. And so if you ask me, then as a conclusion, I will say to redefine that structure becomes an expectation rather than an exception to that rule. It must be redefined. That structure has to be redefined, and even as the previous speakers have said, even as you define those structures, then you must make them impactful, because changing the structure and still obtain the same result, to me, will then be an act in futility in itself. I was talking to Mwalimu Lea Kigwadha, I don't know if she's here, but for instance, if you read the alternatives to breast milk regulations, let me be honest with that. After my wife delivered, we had now to have these substitutes, and I made a deliberate effort to find research into why Carrefour can't have a promotion on them, and it's actually regulated. You can't advertise, you can't make promotions. FIDA Kenya will not put any milk substitute for me to take home as a gift because it's prohibited. And I asked myself then, why? But then if you read into it and understand the committee and its composition, I don't know why women are not involved in the drafting of the regulation, and if they were, then was it meaningful? Yes. So I hope I have attempted to respond to you, even while digressing into my personal life.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kabata. A round of applause for Madam Betty. As the director of the gender department at KSG, we've seen there's gender mainstreaming policies and frameworks. There's gender policies. We have all sorts of policies and frameworks with us. But why is it that they do not translate into meaningful change?
Okay. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this very powerful panelists. Let me just quickly dig into what has already been said. We have already said that many of these positions women hold are simply to tick the boxes. And the bigger question is why? We live in a patriarchal culture, and I dare say policies, laws cannot change that culture. We need to go further. And patriarchal culture is so deeply rooted because it's certain stereotypes that define what a man should do, what a woman should do. And when you step out of what has been defined, you're quickly ridiculed. Let me give you an example, and I'm so glad we have a man here. If you start crying here as a man, what will we say? He's not man enough, right? Oh, sorry. We will say he's not man enough, right? When Faith Odhiambo would speak in public and question the lack of rule of law, there were many people who asked, who is this woman? How dare she? It took tremendous courage to step outside what she's expected to do. And when you think about our constitution really has gone beyond our culture. We have Article 10 that talks about many things that we should be, but we haven't practiced that constitutionalism because patriarchy is deeply rooted in us, in our thinking, in our practice, that is what we need to confront. So secondly, we have various institutions that talk about, they measure the numbers. So you have GEC that will do all these institutional, requirements and ask, have you met the 2/3 gender rule? And everybody will tick the boxes. Yeah, we have. But so what? There is no policy that has answered. How do we ensure that this is not simply ticking the boxes? It's the culture, and that is more difficult thing to do. So I don't know if you will ask the second question, or I can intertwine the second question, which is about what we need to do to have a truly responsive leadership. What does it look like? A truly responsive leadership looks like where you have countries like Iceland. Iceland is the only country that has had how many women leaders? How many? Is it 6 or 7? Iceland is the only country. But what have they done in these countries that have made it ordinary, normal to have women in leadership? Is attack the issue of culture and patriarchy. And I'm really happy that I'm last in this because there have been countries like Finland, Iceland, Denmark, Switzerland, did a very interesting policy where there's a shared maternity and paternity leave. The first 6 months, a mother will go on maternity leave. The next 6 months, Kabata, you would take over. All right? And I was really happy when I listened to him talking, because what I saw him begin to do is he began to be empathetic to the roles that women do. Now, you do this for 6 months, and believe you me, not only do you become more empathetic, but you begin to actually shape policies that will change the life of the mother of your children. And this is what we need to do. That when there is a shared maternity-paternity leave, there will be empathy. And that's what needs to happen for patriarchy to be dismantled. But secondly, when you think about patriarchy, it's not just harmful to women. It's equally harmful to men. When we tell him he cannot cry, does it leave his emotions? No, it stays there. Today we are seeing a lot of men who are hurting, but they cannot express that hurt. Where do they express it in? In their alcohol and substance abuse, but it's also in the femicide we are seeing. So we need to talk about patriarchy from both ends. That it doesn't just hurt women, it hurts men. And this is the change that we really need to have, so that our policies and our laws can actually work for all of us. But so long as we simply think that policies and laws would change us, they will not, because those patriarchal stereotypes are so deeply entrenched in our minds, it's difficult to change that. So I want to stop there as we go on to the next set of questions.
Thank
Ilham, not yet, just be seated. Just be seated with the panelists. Just a few questions standing between us and lunch, and then after which you'll take a photo with the panelists, then you can leave. So from the floor of the House, thank you. This must be Wakesho. Okay.
Thank you. I have my name is Wakesho Kililo. I have 2 questions. The first to Faith, and there's something that you have said that has really struck. Institutions where women leadership is ordinary, right? How can we do this practically? Second, to you, Tess, and again, you're talking about the hope that we can move from numerical representation to actual power. And, looking around the room, we have branch chairs, Natasha, Damarachi, Ivy Sharon, Dindia Bikini. This room is actually full of female leaders within our profession. So what can FIDA do practically to make sure that these leaders here are supported, they don't fall through the cracks, and we also, nurture a new upcoming generation of leaders? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we'll take 2 more.
Thank you very much. Because you mentioned the right to reply, please allow me, because it would be remiss of me not to set a few things clear. One, we have the sexual harassment policy in the judiciary, which was developed with the assistance of FIDA and IDLO. It is in place. 2, the present Chief Justice has actually set up an employee protection unit, and a gender inclusivity and diversity unit, which is headed by Lady Justice Njoki Ndung'u. The Employee Protection Unit has a role not only investigative, but also encouraging anonymous reporting, exactly because of what you are mentioning. I think what we lack is the visibility. Probably not many are aware of the existence of the unit. So that the message I'll give back is, let us make this more visible so that those that are within the judiciary, especially from the lower cadre, who are usually the target of such harassment, may be aware of it. So thank you for bringing that to light, but also let's set the record right that with a female head, we have actually been able to realize the setting up of these two units. Thank you.
Thank you. That's excellent. Beverly?
Thank you. Mine is a comment. So I believe in terms of going forward, so that we'll not be agonizing, but we are organizing. I wish to make a proposal because of our clout as FIDA. So number one, let's look at when we give awards as members of law society to law firms and public sector, let's consider including one of the criteria is in terms of safety for the employees therein. Because I don't think that's one of the criteria. We just focus on the profit. And so therefore, I think after this, we could consider pushing that strongly. And it's good we have Kabata here and other also male members. We have our chairperson. So please consider including that, so that even as we are nominating organization, that is key and that should take substantive points. The second one is in terms of socialization. I think we also need to interrogate how are we socialized at our family level, because it doesn't make a much difference if you've been socialized to believe that you are a second citizen, or even within our community. We have to challenge that, because if we don't, you will get into the power structures and you're dealing with persons who have a perspective of the place of women. And I'll give an example, like in the spaces I've been, I've had a number of male colleagues telling me, don't be so upfront in this matter because you're going to be victimized. So already they're seeing me as a helpless person. I cannot step forward, and they're like even afraid of me. So, and I must confess at times it has made me to do a double take. Are these men having legitimate concerns when they say that they want to fight for me so that I am not victimized? The last point, just to contribute to what Judge has mentioned, is we need to look at it not as a negative. The fact that we have these cases coming up, it could be an indicator of people feeling safe to come forward and to report these cases. So let's also look at the flip side, and let's be aware of the battle of narratives, even as we're dealing with the many issues of challenges. The last point also we need to be cognizant of is we assume that the power structures we want to get into, they're also beneficial to men. I think where we'll tip the scale, also if we show how it's not only disadvantageous to women, but also to men. And I believe when we do that, we may make headway. And I'm saying this as a person who worked on masculinity studies on certain issues, and that is a way also we'll be able to bring men as champions when they can attest to the fact that the structures that are there where we are pushing women to go into, it is not favorable. We need to dismantle it totally. Then in that way we'll be having women who get into powers and also are able to bring about the difference that we want. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were very many final ones. Just one last one.
Very much. Now, my comments are about 3 issues, and probably just trying to also give certain suggestions on some of the solutions. Now, one of the things that we've talked about over the years is how do members feel included, and also the need for recruitment of younger lawyers into FIDA, because soon we'll have a deficit of members of FIDA. So we need to have a recruitment drive for getting younger members on board, and secondly also we need to include them, because When you pay a fee every year and then you don't feel the presence, there's a tendency to say, okay, why am I doing this? But we just need to have a drive, and at one point I even offered, if you can bring a table at Kenya School of Law and just put somebody there for even a few days, we'll be able to capture new members and capture them early. As we're told, it is an advantage. Then the other issue that I liked about this presentation is on the issue of advocacy. Advocacy for change. We need to advocate for even budgetary allocations and also the whole idea of institutional policies. That is something that we can advocate on. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that even as we are getting news, we are conquering some strides, we still need to go further. When we look at, and this is something that I'm glad that the judge pointed it out, the issue of toilet politics. Every time I'm in a public toilet, I always just wonder, are there any female architects? Because we'll have 2 toilets, the men will have 2 toilets and 3 or 4 urinals. And you know, our business as women in the toilet is a lot. It's a lot more than the men. So that, like yesterday, I was virtually the last person leaving the train station, while the men's toilet was empty, because there's a long queue in there. I think it is time that we fought for certain things which you have not even mentioned. Because the issue of politics, the toilet politics, we need to state it. Every time you go into an institution, you find the women's queue is up to outside there. But the men have toilets which we can't use. I think that is how low down we need to go. I agree we've conquered certain things, but it is time for us to go into the nitty-gritty so that we are not leaving any stones uncovered. Then I also like the issue of data-driven change and asking for change through data. We cannot talk about things which we cannot touch. So we really need to be able not just to collect our own data, but to use data which is outside there to then inform some of these shortcomings that we are talking about. And with those many remarks, and this I must put this on the table, Dr. Shilao here agrees with me entirely, especially the issue of involving the membership, involving the young members, having a recruitment drive. It's something that we had to have done yesterday, not just today.
Thank you very much, Mwalimu. We have picked out a lot for action within FIDA Secretariat and the board. But for now, I would wish that we give our panelists a chance to either respond and parting shot at the same time, each of them.
My panelist, if you can use 10 or 20 seconds, kindly.
And yes, we have a whole afternoon. We are all free. I know probably there are many other questions. Let's interact within these 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Wakesho, thank you for your question. Indeed, how we need to deviate from the numerical, I believe at this juncture, we also need to deviate from just empowerment to the architecture. Why am I saying architecture? Because as you have highlighted, we have almost 7 female leaders here. But what is the support that we are according them? Number one, we are very realistic to the fact that politics is very expensive. What are the measures that you're doing? And that's why I mentioned Kewapo. Can we borrow leaf? Can we go out there and get a third-party financier? And even come up with a very good concept note as FIDA, a concept note of us fundraising money for the leaders that we have. Why am I saying we fundraise money for them? In LSK, you even as an ABA board member, you know that you're never paid a dime to serve us. But members are very demanding. And at times that is why you even find most leaders, once they get in position once, they never come back again because of the difficulties of that. So if we can explore first how we can economically empower them intentionally, and you can even borrow from Kiwapo. Secondly, we can also explore what Mwalimu was saying and what I've always been advocating for. You start from when someone is young. And when you start from when someone is young, most of the students, when we tell them these FIDA activities, just like what Emeritus President has said, they will just come to help. But when we are having these serious discussions for them to understand what leadership is, what steps you need to make, we never involve them. So it's upon us as FIDA members to change that architecture. We should not just have students to help us. We should also fundraise for our students, because we are involving them, to be participating actively in these discussions. Because just what Waswahili says, mtoto ukimfunza akiwa mdogo, anamea akiwa hivyo. So if we start from a young age, ndivyo akuavyo. Thank you very much, Maura. Kiswahili, asante sana. Mimi ni wa bara ya Machakos. Shikamo sana. Yeah. So, but I'm happy we've been able to laugh, right? So what am I saying, Wakesho? I'm saying in the intentional steps. Fourthly, we also need to collaborate with the law society. Every now and then, when we have new advocates being admitted, we always have an induction for the young lawyers. FIDA is never there to give them an induction about what FIDA is, how we help our members to achieve their potential. So there's so many spaces and gaps that we do not collaborate with FIDA and the law society, because every new admittees, they always meet the representation of the law society. But when advocates have been admitted, we never see the representation there. So we need FIDA to be at the admission site and also FIDA during the induction of young lawyers, so that they know from onset, if you have leadership potential, capability, because you've identified, our issue is not that we lack talent. Our issue is how we restructure our architecture of empowerment. And finally, Wakesho, we should not have our young lawyers oscillating between mentorship and sponsorship. We should make sure we provide both. We mentor them to become who they are, and we hold their hands literally. And that is where the biggest gap is on sponsorship. Thank you very much.
I think today, from this room, I come out empowered. I think, and especially women leaders in the government space, we are sometimes here just to tick the boxes. And this is something we have been burying our heads in the sand. I think we need to get out of that space, speak not just only for ourselves, but speak for others so that they can learn. Let us not fear being labeled, because labeled is something you'll be labeled. That one, if you fear, then at the end of the day, you'll not get it right. So I think I'm empowered, learning that let me not be that one who is being ticked. Let me be that one who is going to make a difference. Thank you.
It's funny that in this panel, three of us work for the government. I won't echo what she has said, but our experience is actually similar. And my part, in short, is no matter where you work, be it in government, be it in private space, be it for yourself or be it with a partner, make sure first you know what you want. After knowing what you want, put in the work hard, prepare, because opportunity always meets the prepared. And thirdly, please, let us exercise the audacity of a fool. This world only recognizes audacious people. If you're not audacious enough, no one will give you that chance. And you become audacious, you also start having delusional optimism, and you will start seeing the changes in your life. Thank you very much.
So I have two issues to respond to. The first one was what Wakesho asked: how can we make it normal? It's our traditions, our informal networks, our relationships that we need to change. You know, how to make it normal is from institutional level, what are the policies that we have made to change the everyday things, the everyday status quo? Because it starts with the small things. How is this office more comfortable to work in? What work environment? Is it toxic or not? And what policies are there to support a woman to grow and leadership to grow in that sector? The traditions that are there, we need to change our perceptions in how we see things. And even, I would say that you can only control what is within your purview. You cannot control how the men in the room think, but you can control how the women in the room think and how you make an impact to ensure that it doesn't happen to you. Now, let me give you an example. She's called who? I'm forgetting her name. She's been made permanent secretary in Geneva right now. Yes, no, for advisor. She was advisor, Monica Jumwa. She gave an example of something that I found very interesting. She said they were in a high-stakes meeting, just negotiating Kenyan's position on trade matters in New York. And they finished the meeting, and predominantly it was Kenyans. So someone passes her note. When the note gets to her and she opens the note reads, "Leo usiku uko wapi?" She folds back the note. Then she tells the chair, "Excuse me, chair, there's something I want to raise and say and put on record." So the chair says, "Okay, it's fine. You can raise whatever you're talking about." And she rises. And she was the only woman in the room. And then she says, "I want to put something on record. I've received a note, has been passed to me, and I want to put it on record what the note says." Then she asks the person who wrote it, "Should I?" Can you imagine his answer? Can you imagine his answer? He begged. He said no. And she said, "Are you sure? I thought you shared with me because it was an important issue." And you could see the sweat that she said he was really sweating. By that simple act, I'm telling you, no one dared to try her again. And she said she had options of getting up and walking away, shouting at the person, but she chose a formula that will make that person fear any other woman in the room. Because you don't know if that woman is going to put that thing on record and kill your reputation. And of course, how it ended. So I think sometimes we need to challenge status quos wherever opportunities we have, and we don't leave it for someone else. You shouldn't be the one entering into the room, then you close the door. You must be the one entering into the room and lighting or increasing the light in that room, so that people will be able to ensure that whenever a woman walks into that room, there will be change, and they must feel the change. Now, on the second issue, Judge, I'm giving my comments not in a point of, that's why I said don't take it badly, but in terms of comment of a positive critic. And why I say it's positive critic, because people must know about it. People must be talking about it and saying, in this era, we remember the era of so-and-so, this and this could not be done. In the era of so-and-so, this could not have sat well. You see, people need to be singing about it and fearing, and the young lawyers need to be, who are joining the judiciary, need to feel already, even as I join, there's a powerhouse that is ready to cover me. And I say this even particularly with respect to the judicial researchers who are not per se treated as staff. They're the most vulnerable, that face sexual harassment with no opportunity to protect themselves, because the same person who could be harassing you is the one to sign whether you will continue working there or whether your term should be extended. So for me, it's that process. Any female needs to know where can they report. So that should be, of course, in the induction. They need to trust the process, needs protection from retaliation, and needs to see misconduct having consequences. As much as, yes, I know in our legal profession we know main menaces, but they run in their own farms. And whenever you have an opportunity to protect a young girl, you bring them closer to you. But in the judiciary, you see, they are well-known misconduct number one. particularly when you see them getting opportunities for promotion, we normally ask ourselves a lot of questions. And even as that proposal has been made with regard to awards for even law firms in terms of your protection, your ability to protect the female or the male folk working in that institution, maybe even for promotion, these investigations need to be done so that you don't promote problems that others now will be subjected to, because the higher someone raises, the higher their power is, and the more people will have to submit. Because we know people who situations have fallen, unfortunate for them in one way or another, because of their history of how they have dealt with female folk, because people remember. But it's only those who have the opportunity to deal with you. The younger ones who don't have that opportunity, and that's why I say particularly judicial researchers, because it is your boss who gives that recommendation whether you should continue, you should be given another extension. So that protection unit and the ability to see, which is also, and I say it in terms of positive, because I say it's also a challenge we have. And something that I say even a larger problem with regards to the pupillage system that we need to think about, because somebody can frustrate you in when you're doing your pupillage, and they refuse at the end of the day even to sign because you refuse to give in. So you have to start pupillage afresh, which is something we need to deal with in the legal profession. People should be named and shamed and should be dealt with, so that other females joining the legal profession, even men, should not go through that process. And as I finish, I would say my parting remarks is, we cannot say in this country we don't have the constitutional promise, we don't have laws, that we don't have enough laws, except the 2/3 gender bill that has refused to come into force. But in terms of a constitutional promise, it is there. It is how it's interpreted that is a challenge, and us bringing institutional change to bridge that gap. The question is, in any space that you sit in, how can we bridge from constitutional promise to institutional change? How can we make these two bridges meet? Because our forefathers, Judge has told you, they fought for even women to have their own toilets. Others have fought for maternity leave to be included. For women, you know, before, men used to get tax subsidies for having a wife before in KRA, as you fill in your returns. And I know this because my mom used to do both their returns with my dad. And she used to tell him, include this part so that when she's filing for him, he gets a tax subsidy because he's married. Things have changed, but there are things that still need a lot more changing. Women in institutional places, in Oval offices, just that support from the ground going up. And I say this because I think perspective sometimes, if you live in Nairobi, you think everyone is appreciating or benefiting from the same kind of privilege you have. This is not a reality around the country. If you still go to schools where a teacher will rape a child, get her pregnant, and then the family is so happy when he offers to marry her, because marrying a teacher is the greatest thing they can imagine in that construct. People get raped, and a small compensation or a token, the family is happy because they are poor, but the life of that girl is changed forever. So it is up to us, how can we bridge that distance? Because the reality of the things we enjoy, other people have fought for. It's time for us to push and bring that bridge closer, so that those who will come after us can also remember that this generation also fought and left for us something. Thank you.
I will not take a long time, since there were no questions that were posed in my direction, but to reflect on the beautiful moments we've had. And last evening I also learned that I could have a good time without having to pay for any bills. Chair, may that continue in the next 5 days. I'll be here. But on a very serious note, if you're not on the table, you're definitely on the menu.
Thank you. So thank you very much. There weren't specific questions, but I just want to talk about data-driven decision making. Currently, we are part of a team that's working on the ratification of Convention 190 on workplace violence and harassment. And I really hope that we can get FIDA, LSK, Kenya School of Law to get involved. And what I really like about this convention is that it addresses violence in all its forms, whether it's physical, whether it's sexual, or whether it's emotional. And we did this study in over 1,500 participants were involved in this at the national and county governments. Now, as Faith was talking about how a supervisor has so much stake on a young lawyer, they could use simply some misinformation to not promote them or to get them, having done pupillage. And one of the things we found in that research is that rumors and gossip were one of the biggest violence impacted on people at work. There is no law really that really talks about that. I know we have Article 39 on psychological safety, but it's not explicit on this area. And I'm just thinking that if we can really rally everybody to do this convention, and it will simply just expand the space that will address all the kinds of violence that many of us, both men and women, go through. So I hope that we can get some of you to get involved in this. And the second part of that is that we will also need a gap analysis of what's missing currently so that we can address these violences that are affecting all of us. So I hope this is something that we can rally together with all of you in this room.
A better round of applause to the panelists, please. We need a group photo, at least for the 5 of you and Ilham. Photographers, please.